Thanks, Micho. My name is Jyoti Iyer, and my talk today is about focus partitioning in Hindi-Urdu, which is not an understudied language. So I thank the organizers and powers that be for giving me this opportunity to talk to this audience. Okay. So today's talk is about Hindi-Urdu, which is an Indo-Aryan language, and it's largely spoken in South Asia, which is a linguistic area in the sense that there are many areal features which are shared by languages across families in this geographical region. SOV word order is one of those features. So is positional focus, which is indicating focus by means of word order. So there's been a proposed pre-verbal focus position that has been around for a long time and has been proposed for many languages in this region. And you'll see that work on this goes back at least to 96 and is still kind of ongoing. So this is still a robust topic of interest. The standard analysis of focus in South Asian languages is basically that there's a focus projection just above the VP. It has a single specifier, and that's where focus magic happens. That's where the focus constituent, if there is one, surfaces. So I'm going to look closely at Hindi-Urdu and show you that this analysis undergenerates the actual attested possibilities for positional focus. I'm not going to go deep into the syntax considering the venue, but we can talk about that if you're interested. But my main sort of goal today is to show you the pattern as I have here. Okay, so why is it that this focus in these languages has been studied so much? And somehow a new pattern is still, discoverable. I think it's because to see the undergeneration, I'll show you, you need a couple of specific things. You need just more stuff that can be focused than the examples that people have traditionally kind of looked at. You also need something focus sensitive that can reveal effects of having focus in different places. And in fact, the pattern that I'll show you has been noticed recently by Bhatt and Dayal in a paper that's about the polar question particle kya, and it's a kind of byproduct of stuff that they are studying. And my tools today are, I'll be kind of looking more at ditransitives to give me that extra stuff to focus and extra argument. And I'll be using the focus sensitive adverb vapas, which means back. So my empirical claims today are going to be the following. The position of vapas, back, determines the content of its presupposition. So focus non-neutral orders, and I'll tell you what they are, have been thought of as restricted to cases where arguments appear in non-canonical order. So let me just say that in an easier way, maybe. So argument scrambling has been thought of in the literature as something important, as the sort of like key to positional focus. I'm going to show you that these focus non-neutral orders can also arise when arguments appear in their canonical order, but I'll be showing you that just varying the position of an adverb can get you some focus effects. What are my analytical claims? So this is actually like work I'm doing in my dissertation, and my dissertation is about back. So I care a lot about what back actually means. And so I'm going to kind of just take as a central point that there's a core property of different senses of back, which is stable across languages, at least the ones that have been studied. And that is that it operates on paths of scalar change, which is my term, but it basically just means back likes to modify paths and other things that can be reduced to paths. And there is some work on this, which I'm drawing heavily from. Back is a focus sensitive presupposition trigger, which is defined if and only if there is a prior event with a past reverse to the asserted event. So that's kind of the short version of what back means. Something interesting that I'll show you is that the precise event properties of this presupposed event can be actually very, very different from the asserted event. That's in contrast to things like again, for example. The Hindi-Urdu facts about the presupposition of vapas and how it varies with its position are, I'm saying, are explained by focus alternatives. That's more of a goal. I'm trying to explain it by focus alternatives, and this is progress, but I'll show you the kind of like core things that I'm trying to capture. And so the title of the talk comes from sort of the main empirical point here, which is that the adverb vapas seems to partition sentences into two zones. And if there's a focused constituent, it's got to occur in the post-adverb zone. It can't occur preceding the adverb. So watch out for that. And there's going to be some open syntactic questions, which I need to answer before I finish my dissertation, but not today. Okay, so I'll just set a baseline and also look at the time. Okay. So I'm going to use this term focus neutral as a catch-all for all sentences that don't have any instance of narrow focus. I just want to be explicit about the terminology because the literature on focus, as a lot of you know, is kind of fuzzy on a lot of these terms. I deliberately avoid saying things like canonical word order unless I really mean it, because that conventionally refers to only order of arguments and doesn't really say anything about adverbials. Sorry, there's some like weird noise. I'm trying to ignore that. Okay, so sentences that are focus neutral, let me just like set this up. There are sentences that can be uttered out of the blue, and a kind of out of the bluish context is to answer a broad question like what happened. And in Hindi-Urdu, yes, the arguments are in canonical order typically in focus neutral sentences. But those two things are not the same. And I'll say things like focus neutral order or F neutral order. Okay. So focus neutral orders, like I said, can answer a question like what happened, which in Hindi is kya hua. And non-neutral orders are those that can't answer this. So this is just setting up the baseline. So let's see some simple sentences. Transitive is Ram has brought the book. This is Ram kitab laya hai. This is F neutral because you can say it as a response to one. And the order is SOV, which is the canonical order. Now, if you move something around and you have, say, OSV order, kitab Ram laya hai, you no longer can say it as a response to what happened or out of the blue. You can see the same thing with ditransitive, where the canonical order is subject, indirect object, direct object, verb, which I'm just abbreviating as SIOV. And it's the same thing if you move something around. So in 4, you have Uma ne Ali ko kitab di. In 5, you have Uma ne kitab Ali ko di. 5 is no longer a good response to 1. Okay. So let me just first show you the old observation that these focus non-neutral orders correlate with the presence of narrow focus on a constituent. How do we know? And what this means is like if there is something focused in the sentence, the word order of the sentence should fail this out of the blue test. I'm going to assume that the primary pragmatic function of any marked word order, and maybe this is a too broad a claim, but at least in these cases, the pragmatic function is to introduce material that's not already given, which is not to say that the material necessarily has to be discourse new. It can be stuff from the common ground used contrastively. So these are not controversial assumptions. And so, like I sort of hinted at, previous scholarship has generally treated these non-neutral orders as synonymous with argument scrambling. So let's look at those cases first, and then I'll show you that, if you want to call it adverb scrambling, I don't think it is adverb scrambling, but I'll show you that that can give you these focusy effects. Okay, so the known facts that are that when there is argument scrambling, the constituent that appears in the immediately pre-verbal position gets a focus interpretation. Okay, and if you kind of work in this area, these are facts that you already know. Okay, so let's look at one of the non-neutral orders. Ram kitab laya hai, with, oh, sorry, I totally read that as the wrong thing. So the 6 is, excuse me, Kitab Ram Laya Hai, which is OSV. And this has the focus marking as in 7. Okay. So Ram is the thing that's immediately preceding the verb. So, so there's focus on that thing, pre-verbal focus. How can we tell that that's where the focus is? Generally, people have shown this by things like the following. Let's look again at the same sentence. Kitab Ram laya tha. You can only target the pre-verbal constituent with a question. So you can ask a subject question, like in 9. And that this is a good sequence. You can say, for example, Kitab kaun laya tha, and the response is Kitab Ram laya tha. Fine. You can't do it if the question is about, say, the direct object. Okay. Same thing happens with ditransitives, which I'm just gonna quickly skip over. It's the same pattern. So the summary so far is that when there is focus non-neutral order, it's obligatory for the sentence to contain some focus. You can't utter sentences with these non-neutral orders out of the blue because of this focus that they obligatorily contain. And sort of just a rough description of why is that it would be hard to figure out what specific proposition to accommodate such that the focus is felicitous. Okay, so just to kind of say that again, argument scrambling in the literature has been taken to be the only way to get focus non-neutral order. And the stuff that people have noticed before is that when you have argument scrambling, the thing in pre-verbal position is what gets focus interpretation. Now I'll show you that you can get these non-neutral word orders by varying the position of the right kind of adverb or something else, but I'm going to look here at just an adverb. And what I'll show you is actually that when the position of the focus sensitive element is changing, the pattern is that any constituent following the adverb can get a focus interpretation and no constituent preceding it can. So that's again the focus partition. And you'll see this in a second. Okay. Yeah, this is kind of just repeating what I've said, and we can, if somebody's interested later, I can sort of show you the syntactic predictions that the FOC-P analysis makes, which are not met. Okay, so I want to show you some basics of the adverb back first before I can set up the focus partition stuff. Right. So the adverb back in Hindi is vapas, and I'll show you these kind of three related senses. Number 13 is Bina went back, which is Bina vapas chali gayi. Number 14 is Bina gave Ali the key back, which is Bina ne Ali ko chabi vapas de di. And then number 15 is Tukda vapas alag ho raha hai, which is the piece is coming back apart, which is slightly wonky maybe in English, but the basics of back are that its sort of core property is that it operates on things that are either literal paths, spatial paths, like in 13, or so Schwartz 2019 has kind of brought these three senses together under these three kinds of paths, and I'm really interested in preserving this these things under a unified analysis, because this is something that you see across different languages, that you'll see one back adverb that can cut across these three situations. Back is presuppositional. So in 13, the assertion is just something like Bina moved away from someplace X. The presupposition is that she had gone to X earlier. In 14, the assertion is Bina gave Ali the key, and the presupposition is Ali had given Bina the key earlier. And you can sort of do something like that for scalar changes as well. Okay. So I want to sort of tell you something about something interesting about back, which will make the focus partition data make sense. Something that I'm very interested in is how does back sort of find the right presupposition. So you can say things like Ada cycled to school and she walked back. So the earlier event has a reverse spatial path. Ada goes to school, Ada comes back from school, and this is expected on, whatever semantics one gives for back, it would have to involve some sort of reversing of the path. However, there's also this additional difference that difference in how the path is being traversed. So Ada is cycling and then she's walking, and somehow that's okay with back. And this is again like something that I really want to figure out how to capture. Another example is Bob emigrated in the 50s. His family came back to Holland recently. Again, reverse spatial path, fine, expected. But also another difference, who is traversing that path, which to me seems even more kind of remarkable and odd. Like, how is this actually satisfying whatever presupposition back has? And what is that presupposition in that case? And then in 18, you have, I gave the cashier a 20 and he handed me back some change. Again, there's some additional difference. You'll notice that these are all very natural, perfectly fine sounding sentences, nothing otherwise remarkable about them. This is in sharp contrast to again, which is not just a presuppositional adverb which presupposes a prior event. In that sense, it's very similar to back, but also it tends to be languages often have the same one word for both these three path senses of back, and also a repetitive meaning. So back and again, even to a certain extent in Hindi-Urdu, and certainly in Dutch and Kutchi Gujarati, there's one word that can express all these things. So it's interesting, the contrast here. If you say in 19, okay, let's do this. Yeah, in 19, it's just a simple sentence. Ada went to school yesterday. If you try to do this, like give an additional difference with again, it just doesn't work. the prior event and the asserted event would again have to be identical. And it's not that that back also requires an identical event with just the path reversed. Back is actually more fluid. Okay, so no difference is tolerated with again, even if you sort of try to focus. There's no time to go through all of these things, but you know, if in the question period I can. Yeah. So why is Vapas interesting? Because, so for starters, so I've shown you now that, so I've given you a lot of background stuff about what back does, and the fact that the two events involved in its meaning can sort of mismatch. Vapas is of great interest to me because it can go in different syntactic positions, or let's say it can surface in different positions. I'm not committing right now to the syntax just yet. So for example, 21, Bina gave Ali the key. This is just a ditransitive without Vapas. You can see now that Vapas can go anywhere, right? So you can have Vapas Bina ne Ali ko chabi di, Bina ne Vapas Ali ko chabi di, Bina ne Ali ko Vapas chabi de di. And only this last order where Vapas is in the immediately pre-verbal position itself, that's the only focus neutral order. So that's the only order that can be uttered out of the blue. The others are all marked. So let me just show you that very quickly. Bina ne Ali ko chabi vapas de di. Fine, you can say that as a response to what happened. You can't say any of the other orders. So there's something going on here, and you know, based on what we've seen, what I've tried to set up, these things that are bad out of the blue or as a response to what happened, they're bad because there's some focus in there, and you just can't walk into a room and say a sentence with focus in it. So I'm going to zoom in on one of these cases and show you the focus partition that we're all waiting for. Okay, so, right, let's just look at this one instance. Benu ne vapas Anu ko chabi di. So the adverb is vapas. There are two constituents after it, the indirect object and the direct object. And you can, so just going back to the two events can sort of vary, the preceding and the asserted event. So let's look at the sequence. The sequence is one day Anu gave Benu a lock and later Benu gave Anu a key back. And in Hindi, this is ek din Anu ne Benu ko tala diya, Benu ne vapas Anu ko chabi di. Now, there's a syntactic restriction on which things can mismatch. And you know, that should inform us, it should tell us something about how the presupposition of back is working. So you can target chabi, which is key, which is in the post adverb zone. You can also target Alicia, which is basically the indirect object again in this post adverb zone. So in 24a is the indirect object is Benu ko. In 24c you can say Alicia ko, and that would still serve as a licit sequence. You can't target the subject because it's before vapas. So this is kind of the key contrast. So I'm just gonna like take a second and spell this out. So 24a, I'll just read it out. A and D. So एक दिन अनु ने बेनू को ताला दिया, बाद में रिजू ने वापस अलीशा को. Oh, there's a bad typo here. Excuse me. Okay, so D actually should not have Alicia in there. D should be identical in all respects. So it should be actually Riju ne vapas Benu ko tala diya. And I mean, apart from the typo, the fact is that that you can sort of do things that are kind of focus like things which probably involved alternatives, you can do those operations or you can make reference to them if that stuff is following the adverb, and you can't do it with stuff before the adverb. I'm just gonna skip over this for now. Okay. So this is something that Bhatt and Dayal have noticed. And so another sort of way you can target these things in the post-adverb zone are like, if you use rising intonation, these declaratives turn into yes-no questions. So 25 is, Bina ne वापस अली को ताला दिया या लिफाफा. So you can follow this up like, so this is, did Bina give did Bina give Ali a lock back or an envelope? Fine. You can also do Bina ne वापस Ali को ताला दिया या Arjun को? Fine. You can't do Bina ne वापस Ali को ताला दिया या Bipasha ne. This is not a good sequence. And if you try to sort of do heavy prosody on something to try and save it, that doesn't work. That's ungrammatical. Which is an interesting finding sort of independently. Okay, so here's the pattern again. So the one particular order with this adverb is okay, out of the blue, doesn't have any focus. The others all have focus, and as we've seen, the focus is relegated to this post-adverb zone. And so why is this actually interesting theoretically is that the presence or absence of focus can have a huge impact on how many presuppositions are evoked by a single sentence. So let's take this this sentence, Bina ne वापस Ali को चाबी दे दी. Now, chabi is one option where focus can be. It can also be on Ali. And depending on which option one chooses, there's just a proliferation of alternatives. And what do I mean when I say alternatives here? So, Bina ne वापस Ali ko chabi de di is basically what Bina gave back to Ali was a key. And the presuppositions consistent with this are Ali had given Bina something else earlier. So there's one, the sort of meaning contribution of back is that the action is reversed in whatever way we mean reverse, but also there's something varying based on focus. Okay. So the takeaways are that so most positions of vapas are bad in out of the blue context, but it's not just because it's presuppositional. The presupposition can be accommodated in some situations. The bad cases are bad because they have presuppositions that are too hard to accommodate. There's just too much going on. There's too much focus. And varying the position of vapas has given these sort of many different focus non-neutral orders. And the kind of like main thing I want you to take away from this is that the cases where the presupposed event and the asserted event can differ from each other are exactly the cases where there is focus somewhere in the sentence. Now, how do you actually capture any of this in the semantics, especially when I'm almost out of time? Okay. So I'll just sort of tell you what's going on. So here are the things we have to capture. Vapas is presuppositional. And I mean vapas as like generally a cross-linguistic entry for back. It operates on some sort of path. We want to capture this meaning of reverse, and we need to figure out that there's also this, there's a temporal ordering between the two events. So these are just like what we need to capture. And there are a couple of approaches to this in the literature that you should ask me in the in the question period if you want to get into the nitty-gritties. The main kind of feature of the approach I'm taking here is that that there is a path argument, and I care about that because of the second point in here. Like I said, the sort of three senses of back all need a path, and I want the system to crash if there's no path argument. Because this actually captures some selectional restrictions on what sorts of verbs that back can combine with and what it can't combine with. And it just doesn't combine with non-pathy things in these senses. Okay. There's a whole bunch of semantics here, which basically, if you just look at 38, this gives you like, there's a presupposition in there that there exists basically a prior event with property P, and that has the reverse path. This is just what I've said. We don't need to go into technicalities here. The assertoric content is really vanilla. It's just exactly Ada walked P in E. This is for a sentence like Ada walked back. It's just Ada walked. That's the meaning. And all the action is sort of in the presupposition. Now, I want to highlight a challenge for you, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this, which is the following. So this, the thing that I really want to capture is that the same adverb can sort of eat three different kinds of paths. Now, are these paths actually the same? They're kind of very bizarrely different paths in a sense, but they do tend to like have some, there is a kind of cross-linguistic fact that is worth capturing here. So what I'm trying to say here is that a path like an action path can be treated the same as a spatial path. So a path like going to the store and coming back can be treated the same by back as like an action done by Bina to Ali, or done by Ali to Bina. And so those are kind of analogous, and there are a bunch of open questions in here, but that's sort of the core meaning. Okay. So to just sort of say this very quickly, I'm interested in like, how does back actually look at what is pronounced or what's in its complement, and get to this prior event, considering that there's like all this crazy variation happening. You need the paths to be reversed, and then you have to allow for a whole bunch of other things to vary. Also, how are they sort of constrained? And I've kind of like shown you a little bit of a snapshot of how in Hindi-Urdu you have the syntax telling you something about how you might constrain these possible presuppositions that arise. Okay, so I'll just tell you that a crucial part of the analysis, or one that I'm trying to develop, is the separation of path from event. That path has to be a separate argument, because back needs something concrete to operate on, and to say, give me a prior event such that the path is reversed, and then, you know, use focus to make other variations in the nature of that presupposed event. Yeah, and there's a bunch of things that I need to figure out, and I am assigning that to my own ongoing and future work. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have a few minutes for questions. If you would like to raise your hand or indicate in the chat or write something in the chat. Yes, we have a question from Vera.
Hi. Regarding the path argument, I do think if you look at the formal semantics literature, for instance, on goal and source preposition phrases and motion verbs, I think that's the exact same argument they're making, that we do need like we need to be able to map an event to its temporal shape. And we're very familiar that from lexical entries for aspect, but we do actually also plausibly need a similar function that maps an event to its kind of spatial shape, be it in actual space or be it kind of, as you said, right, kind of this more metaphorical space. So this kind of spatial path function, I think, would come in really handy here for the formalizations of these sentences.
Thanks. Yeah, exactly. We're used to sort of seeing things like, oh, we're not going to talk about the aspectual information or the tense information because they're higher in the tree. So you can just look at an event minus that stuff. And the challenge here is I'm trying to figure out if it is possible to look at the event minus its path specification. And, you know, if it's a motion event, like I'm walking, it's an event of walking, here's the path I'm traversing, fine. But now, can you do something analogous to like, you know, I'm giving you a book, you're giving the book back to me. And in a lot of languages, back seems to treat that as a path. So how do we get at that path from something which is like an agent and a recipient? And that's the part that I'm kind of worried about because that seems a bit weird. But yeah, I mean, if people have any thoughts on that, I would love to hear them. So thanks.
Yes, we have a question from Josh.
Yeah, I guess kind of building on that comment that you made at the end, Jyoti, and then Vera kind of followed up with. I mean, it's sort of what it reminded me a little bit of is just kind of like what you see in like these very decompositional neo-Davidsonian kind of approaches to events, right? So if you have a ditransitive, then it's assigning like a goal and an agent and a theme and stuff like that. So it feels like kind of a path falls out of that, right? So yeah, like I mean, I have no idea what it would look like, but maybe rather than thinking of paths as some sort of like primitive domain in your ontology, there's some way of kind of assuming that, yeah, a given predicate has these properties and assigns these types of things, and the path is really epiphenomenal on those. So, I mean, I assume you have sort of thought about that a little bit, but I mean, yeah, it's also kind of, yeah, it would be super interesting to see how that could be kind of, I don't know, spelled out a little.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, there's a couple of kind of different ways that people have thought about this before as well. Schwartz, of course, is one of them. He has a lot of work on paths, and so, a bunch of work by Sigrid Beck is also kind of like trying to pin that down. Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, the reverse function is not particularly controversial. It's whatever kind of path you give it, it's sort of fine. And I think the kind of more challenging bit is sort of how to figure out. So okay, let's say there is focus somewhere. So how to kind of figure out like, how does the adverb, you know, take a proposition with focus in it, and then like how does the math work out basically? But yeah.
Super neat.
Great. I think unfortunately we're out of time and we should move forward. So let's thank Jyoti again.